Hello everyone, my name is Denise and today I'll be talking on the topic to validate or to challenge. So I'll be putting two counseling modalities on the table, person-centered therapy versus cognitive behavior therapy. Let me just tell you what person-centered therapy is. Person-centered therapy, in short PCT, was founded by a man called Carl Rogers. So before he was trained in psychology, counseling, he was actually brought up in the training in agricultural science, which means that he was an expert at creating good environments for crops to flourish. So of course that no doubt shaped his way of looking at human beings. Okay, his theoretical approach is phenomenology, which means that you respect the person's experience. All experience is sacred and nothing should be cast out. He was also the one who coined the term congruence, which means to be congruent, which is one of the ultimate goals of PCT, is to be in a state where your actions are aligned with your values and your current emotions. Okay, so for example, if I do not like a person, I'm able to accept it in myself. I don't like you, but it's okay. I'm not called to like 100% of all human beings on this world. There's some people that I just cannot stand, and that's fine. I don't judge myself, and I also don't force myself to be too nice to you, to overcompensate. So that would be that I'm growing towards congruence, and that's an improvement. Okay? On the other hand, there's this thing called cognitive behavior therapy. So in CBT, we believe that there's a relationship between your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. They are related. So if I think that I'm super attractive, I will feel very confident, and my actions, I'll be very forthcoming in interacting with strangers. Or I might dress in a more sexy way. Okay, but if I feel that I'm not so attractive, I'll feel inadequate. Then I'll dress up probably in a more modest way and interact in a less confident way. So my thoughts will affect my feelings and my actions, right? So there's a implicit presupposition in CBT, which is that it's easy to attack the thoughts. Thoughts are so-called the place to go into you, and also thoughts is a place where there is a lot of distortions in the face of depression and anxiety. So if we can modify the thoughts, the person's feelings would improve and her actions will become more helpful to her instead of self-sabotaging. Okay, so there's this. So CBT, a lot of it is cognitive therapy, which is to target the thoughts. Okay, at this point I'm going to read out a quote from this book, The Body Keeps the Score. When I first encountered patients like Marilyn, incest survivors, I used to challenge their thinking and try to help them see the world in a more positive, flexible way. One day, a woman named Kathy set me straight. A group member had arrived late to a session because her car had broken down, and Katie immediately blamed herself. I saw how rickety your car was last week. I knew I should have offered you a ride. Her self-criticism escalated to the point. Only a few minutes later, she was taking responsibility for her sexual abuse. I brought it on myself. I was 7 years old and I loved my daddy. I wanted him to love me, and I did what he wanted me to do. It was my own fault. When I intervened to reassure her, saying, "Come on, you were just a little girl. It was your father's responsibility to maintain boundaries." Katie turned towards me. "You know, Bessel," she said, "I know how important it is for you to be a good therapist. So when you make stupid comments like this, I usually thank you profusely. After all, I am an incest survivor. I was trained to take care of the needs of grown-up insecure men. But after 2 years, I trust you enough to tell you that those comments make me feel terrible. Yes, it's true, I instinctively blame myself for everything bad that happens to the people around me. I know that it isn't rational, and I really feel dumb for feeling this way, but I do. When you try to talk me into being more reasonable, I feel more lonely and isolated, and it confirms the feeling that nobody in the whole world will ever understand what it feels like to be me." Okay, I love this statement because Kathy was being very honest, and at that moment she was being very congruent, and she really nailed a point, remember, okay, if you watch my previous videos on the book review on The Body Keeps the Score, I spoke briefly about how trauma alters the way the person thinks, and even the brain's capacity to think is greatly affected by trauma. So this is what Katie is trying to tell the therapist. It is not that I don't know that I'm irrational. I know it, but I'm trying to express my experience, my whole gestalt at this moment. I'm trying to express it in the most congruent, honest way that I can. And what I want is for you to mirror it, to validate it, so that I won't feel so alone and misunderstood, and I won't feel so stupid. But when you say statements like this, like, oh no, it's not your fault, it's your father's fault. I mean, I'm not dumb, right? I know it. Katie knows it. It's just that she cannot control it. So that is when PCT comes in, right? Because PCT, a lot of it is about paraphrasing, reflecting content, and reflecting the feelings. So okay, let's say if I'm the therapist and I'm using PCT in that group, right, and she was expressing herself, I would say, thank you, Katie, for sharing. That was a really congruent and honest sharing, and I appreciate it. And I'm so glad that after 2 years you've become so honest and open with your sharing. Indeed, you are feeling like you are responsible for everything, for not taking the initiative to give that lady a ride here today, for not even being able to stand up and draw the boundaries for yourself when you were a child. You feel like it is all your own fault. And that feeling must be a horrible feeling. You must feel terrible about it right now. So, okay. All I did was to mirror exactly what she said, but I'm not trying to correct her or anything. I'm just giving her space to feel like, oh yes, Denise gets me. What I just said, she just reflected it back, and she gets me. So she won't feel so lonely, and at the same time she won't feel so stupid or patronized, right? As with Bessel's response. Okay. A good lesson that I learned through my clinical practice. At the end of some sessions, I sometimes have a crisis of confidence. I feel like, was I too permissive during today's session? Did I validate too much and not challenge enough? Okay? Like, I should have told her that. I should have challenged her more. But then my clients usually surprise me because I tend to underestimate their inner resources and their ability to come to their own conclusions, okay? I create a very permissive, very open environment where they can just express themselves fully in a non-judgmental environment, okay? So they hear themselves talking, all that. And then at the next session, they'll tell me, hey Denise, after I talked to you all that, in an unfiltered way, I went back and I reflected, I realized that it's not true. What I said was wrong. It's not my fault. I said, thank you and thanks for allowing me to express myself so authentically last session, so that now I know that was actually what I was really thinking and what I was actually feeling, and it's not true because I went back and checked the facts. It's not true. So I shouldn't have to feel that way. So you see, they did their own CBT. Okay, with that said, is it necessary to teach them the principles of CBT? Yes, I do. I do teach them this basic triangle, to teach them the list of cognitive distortions, to teach them the thought record form. I do teach them that. And sometimes I have a bit of reinforcement. I revise that with them. But that's about it. And occasionally I'll do some Socratic questioning. But a lot of the time it's just sitting there and validating them. So, okay, that's the end of today's video. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, kindly press like, subscribe and share with your friends. Thank you and God bless.